Appreciate it. Well, g'day. It's great to be here. I love talking to entrepreneurs and real estate agents, I believe, and those people associated in the industry are such entrepreneurs because everything comes down to the commission and everything revolves around how hard you work. So I'm really pleased to be here. Today I am not going to talk to you about how to improve your business or your sales or how to make your job more efficient, because I've bought houses and I've sold houses, but I know nothing about the industry. But what I am here to share with you today are three philosophical points that I have learned over the course of the 17 years that I ran UGG and then another 15 years of entrepreneurial businesses since then, that have led my life and have
Let's get you to the back of the room.
great, sorry. And that have helped me through all sorts of situations. So having said that, if you could just forward to the next slide. We've had some technical difficulties here this morning, so we'll just have to bear with this weird screen. So I call these my three gems. When I just recently, a lot of people have asked me, how did you start UGG? Why did you start UGG? And I ended up writing a book because the questions were so similar, and I felt there were so many people wanted to know the answer to that. So I wrote a book and have begun my public speaking career, based upon the book. And the thing that I've found mostly that I wanted to share with you as far as business in general, it doesn't matter if it's a sandwich shop or a new religion, or a new real estate business, a new electronic device. Every business starts with conception. Then this conception, the person takes action and gives birth to the whatever it is. And then the product or the service or whatever it is will just go through this interminable infancy, and it will just like an infant, it just lies there, and it doesn't matter how much you feed it, shake it, plead with it, it is not going to get out of the cot and go to college. It has to stay an infant until the period's finished. And then you get into the toddling stage where it starts to move, runs around like a little toddler. You have to keep your eyes on it all the time. And that's a good part of the business because you finally see some action. And eventually you'll hit the youth, which is a cruising period. Just like a kid can put his pajamas on by himself and eat his food and go to the bathroom, clean teeth. The business has regular customers, easy delivery, easy accounting and billing systems. But then if the business is really, really good, it'll hit the teenage years and it will just go out of control. Everybody wants a bit of it. You see everybody wants it, so you just make all these really rash decisions to try and cope with the increase. And then eventually the administrators come in and they put in the controls and it becomes a mature business. So I've coined this whole process, you can't give birth to adults. It's so true, and it goes through every single industry. And so with that as the background, I'm going to sort of share some of the stories that I had from building the UGG boot business. I was 29. I was an accountant in Australia, the equivalent of a CPA here. And I had finished my final exams. That was the last day I ever worked as an accountant because I hated it so much. And I had taken a trip to Bali with some friends who owned a small yacht. I spent 3 months up there and came back, and I was cruising around the house in Perth where I lived and just wondering, what am I going to do with my life? And I had just discovered Pink Floyd music, right? And I was sitting in the living room one day and I just ripped the shreds, the plastic off the Dark Side of the Moon album. And began playing it, and I've always been amazed at the power of words. Well, Roger Waters, who was the songwriter in the second song, wrote the words of, and they went, tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long and there is time to kill today. And I thought, wow, that's me. Nothing to do, days are long. But then it went on. But then one day you find 10 years have got behind you. No one told you when to run. You missed the starting gun. And as soon as I heard those words, I just got goosebumps. They just ran all over my back, down my legs. And I went, God, you're right. I thought of all my friends who I started out accounting with, they're all tracking onto partnerships. Thought of all my other friends who'd started businesses 10 years previously, and they were all doing well, and I'd been running on the spot in a business I hated and had nothing to show for it. And so that was the catalyst for me. The 3 days, I was in the office of my friend Pam, who had a travel agency, and I was going to come to California, where all the trends had come back to Australia from, and waterbeds, Levi jeans, all the surf brands. I was going to find the next big thing in California and bring it back to Australia. So we figured out the itinerary. We calculated it from from Perth to Sydney to LA was one way. The other way was flying, getting a ship for a week from Perth up to Singapore, and then flying Singapore to London, London to New York, and then the Greyhound bus across to Los Angeles was $69 cheaper. So that was a no-brainer. I love Singapore. So it had been, I was now in California. I've been here three or 4 months, and still hadn't found the product that was going to change Australia. And one day I was flicking through a surf magazine, and I noticed an ad that an Australian manufacturer had put in there showing a fireplace and a couple of pairs of legs up wearing sheepskin boots. And as soon as I saw that, I got goosebumps again. And goosebumps appear in my life regularly, and I know that's when something inside my spirit is telling me, take notice, this is a very important thing. And I bet you everyone in this room has had the same experience. So anyway, I looked at this ad and I thought, oh my God, 1 in 2 Australians own some sort of sheepskin footwear, and they don't exist in America. So I couldn't wait till it was 9 o'clock in the morning in Albany in Perth, south of Perth, where I called up the manufacturer and said, hey, I'm Australian, I'd love to start importing these. And his name was George Bircher. He sort of blew me off, said, yeah, look, I had a lot of calls from California, and let me get back to you. And there's another theme that I've noticed that's very prevalent since I started my business, and that is when you take action, when you begin something and start to take action, the universe conspires to work with you. And in this instance, George Bircher in Albany had called the Department of Trade in Perth, and who did he speak to? One of my best buddies who was from my rugby team. And so it was like a no-brainer. I ended up getting the distribution rights for this sheepskin boot company and started importing them into Australia, into the US. You could go to the next slide here. Whoops, that's way ahead, yeah. There we go. So you may have seen all of the latest sheepskin boots in Nordstrom's. They don't look like this. Okay, this was the original UGG boot. Had a really thin microcell sole on it. It had glue stains on the top. Had glue stains all around the side. The top wasn't bound, and this was the product that was made, and this is what everybody wore in Australia at the time. And so I started importing these. My buddy, my friend Doug and I, he was there when I saw the Surf magazine ad. We decided, okay, we're going to go into business. So we had no money, so we borrowed $500 and sent it down to Australia and bought 6 pairs of boots. And Doug was going to be the salesman. I was an accountant. I hated sales. I didn't even realize there was a category of sales. But Doug he went on the road and came back a week later with a huge envelope full of business cards of every shoe store that he'd been to in Southern California, and no sales. And he said, everybody's wondering, why the hell are we selling sheepskin boots in California? It doesn't get cold here. And that raised an alarm for me. But anyway, I noticed that there was a shoe show in New York. And so I got a ticket to New York and went to the shoe show. And I was the last minute attendee, so I was given like a half a table way at the back in the corner next to the toilets, you know. And so I think the only people that ever came by my booth were on their way to or from the bathroom. But they would look at the you know, the $6 pair espadrilles from Spain on one side, they'd skip my booth and they'd look at the pumps from Taiwan. And I may as well have been selling car parts or meat or something, because nobody recognized what I had as a footwear category. And 3 days was a long time to experience this, and so I'm wondering, you know, what seemed to be such a brilliant idea when I saw that magazine ad was like falling apart. But again, you know how I said the universe kicks in? On the plane back to Australia, back to San Diego, I was thinking, why do all my friends in California think it's a great idea? And I realized they all surfed. And all the California surfers who'd been to Australia to surf came back with a half a dozen pairs of sheepskin boots for their buddies. And so within the surfing community, it was a really well-known product. So Doug and I split up, you know, LA. He took the Valley, I took Santa Monica South, and we decided to go, you know, call on all the surf shops. And the very first one I went into was Con Surf down in Santa Monica, and the owner goes, "Oh, sheepskin boots, I've got a pair. Those things are great. God, if you're going to import those, you're going to make a fortune." Wow. So I went off to the next stop and, "Oh yeah, my buddy's brought some of those back for me. Yeah, I love those things. You're going to do great," and so on, down through, you know, Hermosa Beach, then through Long Beach and Huntington Beach, and all the way down to San Diego. Doug was having the same reaction up in the San Fernando Valley and all the stores up there. So we reconvened and thought, wow, we are onto something really big here. So we had another problem. We still didn't have any money, and we needed to raise some capital. And serendipity kicked in again. The universe always works when you've got a real good vision. And my roommate said, "Oh, I'm working with some people who are looking for investments, and this could be just right for them." And so within a couple of days, we'd worked out a deal where they gave us $20,000, which we thought was more money than we'd ever need to make this into a, you know, an international success. And we bought $15,000 worth of product, 600 pairs from Albany, and we had the other 5,000 left for doing some advertising and stuff like that. And so a few weeks later, about a month later, it was, you know, September, probably October, November by this time, the, you know, 600 pairs arrived. It was like 30 cartons of you know, 30 pairs of boots each, and we picked them up from the airport and stacked them in our new warehouse, which was the third bedroom in my house in Santa Monica. And it went completely across the wall, all the way 3-4 boxes high to the roof. And Doug and I loaded up our van. I had a van, he had a car, and we loaded them up with product, and we went off to make our fortune. So I go back down to Con Surfboards, and hey, here we are, how many do you want? He said, "Well, Brian, they're really great, but, you know, we sell surfboards and board shorts and thongs. There's no way our customers can afford those." Oh, next stop. "Yeah, boy, those are great. Yeah, they look really good, but I'll tell you what, you should go to the shoe stores, because our customers only buy thongs and board shorts, but they'd go great in the shoe stores." And on and on and on for me, all the way down through to Imperial Beach, and Doug all the way out to Calabasas, the same story. We regrouped after a few days, and if you could hit the next slide. Here's our first year's sales. 28 pairs, it turned out to be exactly $1,000. Now, there's a lesson here though for everybody in this room. UGG for the last 2 years has exceeded $1 billion in sales worldwide. They never would have got there without going through that first stage. So that's an inspirational thing for you. It doesn't matter if you've just started out on your real estate career, if the bookings are small at the moment, the commissions are small. It takes time to develop all this, and it takes tenacity, which you'll see as I go on here. So what I realized was that Americans don't get sheepskin like Australians do. When you're born in Australia, there's a sort of an imprint in your brain about what sheepskin is. Americans think it's hot, it's delicate, it's sweaty, you can't wear it outside, you can't get mud or slush on it. All of these objections, which are all false, because the sheepskin breathes, so your feet always stay at foot temperature no matter what temperature it is outside. And you can get them totally trashed and wet, and sheepskin is one of the few things that retains its warmth when it's totally wet. So these are all the things that I thought was endemic in everybody's knowledge, but we had to really coach people. So we came up with a plan to, if you go to the next slide, wanted to get credibility in the surf shop, so we had a 6-pair stocking plan. Now, this doesn't seem much now, but back then, trying to get a shop to buy 6 pairs was a huge investment. And so I gave a free pair away to the manager, so that when people would come into the store and they'd say, what are those UGG boots like? The manager would say, oh man, these are great, because he's got personal experience. And I learned that because when we did that 1,000 in sales, Doug realized we're not going to make a fortune. He went and got a job in the video business, which he loved. And I was stuck with having to get rid of this warehouse full of boots. And so I used to go up to Malibu, went surfing, and I had a full-size run in the back of the van, and I'd open up the doors, and I would sell out of the back of the van. And the business was pretty brisk, because only people whose friends had told them about it would come. The word of mouth was incredible. And so I realized I had to get that thing going in the surf shops. So I put this plan together, and it was reasonably successful. Opened up a bunch of surf shops, and got it up to, the second year was sales were $30,000. And then the next year, sales were $30,000. And the next year, I'm increasing the advertising, I'm doing more road trips, sales are $30,000. And I was stuck in this infancy. I didn't even realize what I was in at the time, but now I realize I was in that infancy period trying to wait for the breakthrough. And finally, I had my breakthrough. I was down at South Coast Surf Shop in Ocean Beach, and my friend Rob and I were talking, and I'm explaining, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing all the advertising, and I'd been spending a fortune on these really good-looking models, and I'd pose them on the beach at Wind and Sea with all the boots showing beautifully, and the sunset, and phenomenal ads. And so anyway, Robbie calls down the back to all these little grommets, the young kids who would leave their surfboards in the back of the shops in return for sweeping out the floor and everything. He says, hey, you guys, what do you think of UGG boots? And they came in, they go, oh, those things, man, they're so fake. Those models, I bet they can't surf, and instantly, I knew I'd been missing the mark. And there was no credibility in my ads. And I realized that was when I first realized the importance of advertising and good marketing. You have to invite your audience into the ad. You have to make your ad so cool that they want to be in that ad. You can see it with car advertisements on TV. Usually they don't have anybody in the car because they want you to be in the car. And there's a whole science involved. So that began my love affair with marketing and advertising, and that's the main reason that UGG has hit the $1 billion stage now, is I figured out what it is I wanted to show in my ads to get the reader to want to come into it. So the next day I called up a buddy of mine who sold me advertising at Surfing Magazine, Peter Townend. He was a former world surfing champion, and he was another Aussie. And I said, Pete, you got any young amateurs who are going to turn pro soon? And he gave me 2 names. If you could flick to the next one. First one was Mike Parsons, another one was Ted Robinson. And so I decided I was going to build a campaign around these kids. And I also wanted to get girls into the ads, so hit the next one. So we did a few ads using our pro surfers, but bringing girls in because at the time it was strictly a guy's product and the women hadn't really got into it, but this was the beginning of getting them into it. And then the most important thing I did, if you hit the next one, is that I, instead of hiring a professional photographer, I followed these guys with my telephoto lens, and I just shot random shots of these guys. Any surfer who read Surfer Magazine would go, oh my God, they're at Black's Beach. Oh, here they are at Trestles, because they're such iconic walks. They're mile-long walks just to get to the water. And so that is what I started to use to drive in the following fall advertising campaign. Now, while I was getting into the surf shops, I was trying to get into the malls, and I would go to, Kinney, who was a big retailer then, no, we don't want to take those things. Nordstrom, were too early for them. Montgomery Ward's. I was in Chicago at the Montgomery Ward buying office, and I made the best presentation that I'd ever made to that point. And the buyer just sat there, and he sat there, and he eventually said, Brian, why are you here? And I said, I want to get an order for the California stores. He said, Brian, don't you get it? We're the elephants. We don't move till the mice are running around under our feet. And that was like a lightning bolt for me, because I thought that I was failing because I couldn't get into the mall stores, but what it was that I was still stuck in this infancy. And no matter how much I tried to get into the malls, they were not going to do it until there was a fad or a movement. So these two things collided in the Christmas of that year. All the kids saying, Mom, now I got all these ads running, and the kids are going, Mom, all the cool kids at school are wearing UGG boots. I want a pair of UGG boots for Christmas. And the moms, not knowing that they're sold in surf shops, start walking the malls. And they're going to Kinney's. Do you have UGG boots? What are UGG boots? Do you have, Nordstrom? Do you have UGG boots? What are UGG boots? And so this groundswell, we jumped in that 1 year, jumped from the $30,000 to nearly $400,000, just based on a good marketing campaign and getting the thing going. So I'm going to, first of all, let me share gem number one. This is very important. Are you ready for this? Okay, the next slide. The quickest way for a tadpole to become a frog is to live every day loyally as a tadpole. Right? Now that may seem a little trite to you, but if you look at the philosophical ramifications of this, every one of you who is sort of struggling in the business and you should be doing better, and you think that you should be better than you are, just if you're in this infancy stage, the only way to get out of it is to hang in there and stick with it and keep doing what you think is right. Listen to your peers, try and just use your best sense, and eventually something will click, just like it did with me, and you launch from that tadpole into the frog. Okay, so I also want to share a bunch of luck with you that's happened over the course of the period. As well as getting into the surf market, I wanted to get into the ski industry as well, because I figured that was much more broad and it would get us out of California, because nobody in Minnesota's ever read a surf magazine. So I had to figure out how to get into the more mainstream, more US market. So we started advertising in ski magazines, and I'd hired a new salesman who was going to take on that market. And the first thing he said when he came in was, hey, we've got to get rid of this image, we need more sizzle in the ads. So if you could flick to the next shot, statement on luck as I'm talking about it. when you start, luck happens. If you don't start, you'll never get lucky. So let's flick to the next one. So Stan started the big chest campaign for the surf market, and if you flick to the next one, Patty is one of the models that great. Patty was one of the models that we selected for the ski shots, and we did a campaign, and another friend of hers, Jenny, this is when aerobics had just started, so it was at the era of the tight bodies and the slinky, polyester type suits, etc. And we took Patty and Jenny down to Las Vegas for the ski show. It was a 5-day trade show, very grueling, and we had our little boot samples, and because we were renting a little bit of a table space from an existing SIA member who had a bunch of woolen knitted sweaters. We didn't have any room for our background display, so we had a poster of Patty, this one here, and we just taped it to the metal pole that was holding up the curtains, and that was our display, and like 6 pairs of boots on the tables. And Stan and I were working the show for 3 days. No, maybe just a few orders. People would come. Oh, we have mud where we are. We have slush where we are. God, those things look too hot. I hate sweaty feet. And we were trying to convince them to take their socks off and try them. Oh, we never take our socks off. We wear Sorels and we wear big, heavy rubber boots. And so sales were very spotty the first 3 days, but at this period, it was just when Las Vegas was breaking into the disco era, and all the discos were appearing, and Patty and Jenny decided to go out one night to one of the discos, and they selected one that had put TV cameras all over the dance floors and big screens up around so you could watch yourself dancing on the big screen. And they were both dressed to kill. Jenny, I think, had little white shorts and a halter top, and Patty had a little skirt and a halter top, and they were out there and wearing big, tall, white UGG boots. They stood out. It was a great image. And so they were at the disco, and midway through the night, Patty goes into this dance move that sort of went down, 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 and then she jumped up, and the top fell down, and it got caught on the cameras, and they replayed it over and over and over and over all night. And bit by bit, the word's getting out, hey, that's the UGG girl, that's the UGG girl, that's the UGG girl. And so the next morning at our booth, it was like 5 deep with guys all wanting to come and say hi to the UGG girls. And the girls, we train them to say, make sure they get their shoes and socks off and try these boots on. And the universal thing when they did it was that they'd pull the boots on and go, oh my God. And that's, in my UGG boot career, that was the phrase I heard more than any other was, oh my God. And because that's what UGG boots do. And so our sales, we were right as fast as the girls could get these guys' boots off. We were writing orders, And so, after 2 days of that, we sort of packed up the van and we were heading back to San Diego. And I had a stack of orders, and I was sitting in the passenger seat filling out the extensions of how much it was. And we were just winding up the hills from Las Vegas, going after about an hour. And I looked at Stan and said, wow, $96,000, That was 3 times our previous year's sales, And so that's an example of the luck that will come to you. Okay, let's move on to gem number 2. Here we go. Okay, we're now doing, $3 to $4 million. Business is a few years later, and each time, one of the things that most people don't realize is that the more successful you get, or the bigger a business gets, the more money it needs to run. Capital for hiring new people, bigger warehouses, all that sort of thing. And in your instances, it'll be hiring assistants and building an office space, all that sort of stuff. It takes money, and I'd had to buy out previous investors because they didn't have the capacity at the bank to finance the next year. So I would buy them out, and then I'd bring in new investors. So this year, I had brought in 3 new investors, and Neil from Anaheim, and then Paul and Joe who were in Denver, and we were going to share the business 25% each, so we were 4 equal partners. However, there was a caveat on my 25%. I had to bring in the trademark, but it was already in a little lawsuit battle with a company doing UGHS, and I was confident we would win that. So as soon as I brought the trademark in, I would get my 25%. And so now I'm in the business with 3 new partners, and the very first day we moved the business up to Anaheim, which was where Neil lived, and I went from Anaheim down to Huntington Surf and Sport, the closest surf shop there. And I walked in, and the owner goes, "Hey, Brian, I heard you sold the business." I said, "What?" "Yeah, I called in an order, and they said you don't own the business anymore." I went, "What are you talking about?" And I couldn't wait to finish the business, and I walked outside to the gas station at the payphone, and I called up Neil and go, "What the hell are you talking about?" He said, "I'm still an owner of the business." "No, you're not." "I'm still an owner. I just brought you 3 partners in." "Well, you don't own it, Brian." And I went, "Oh my God, I haven't brought the trademark yet." And all my dreams, the vision I have of me owning and running this conglomerate, years down the road, this worldwide marketing and distribution company of sheepskin products, just evaporates, And this happened 4 or 5 times in the next day or two when I'd walk in the door and say, "Hey, Brian, I heard you sold the business." And I went back home to San Diego, and I just retreated for, part of the deal was that I was the sales rep for Southern California, but I was wondering, well, why am I doing this if I don't own the company? And what if I don't win the lawsuit on the trademark? I'll never get my stock. I've just lost this company. And I retreated for a few days, and talked to my wife about whether I should get a job as a business broker or all sorts of things. And eventually I realized, I love the brand, I love the product, I love the industry, I love the business. I'm just going to suck it up and do the best I can. I'm going to be the best sales rep I can. And so I stuck in there, and 3 weeks later, I was in the warehouse, and Neil comes up and gives me a check for $6,000. I said, "That's your commissions." I'd never drawn a cent from the company in the 5 or 6 years I'd owned it up to that point. I went, "Oh my God!" The next month, I get a check for $10,000, and the sales are going, bigger and bigger throughout. Is this okay?
Yeah.
I hear a reverberation here. But the sales are getting more and more, and I'm not doing any of the warehouse work. I'm not packing or shipping boots. I'm not doing any accounting. I'm not doing any of the organization of the business inside and I'm just out visiting with all my buddies in the surf shops and having a great time. And the 3rd month I got another $10,000, and I'm thinking, wow, this is pretty damn good. And that leads me to the next philosophical point. You ready for the next one?
Yeah.
Okay, this isn't the gem, but this leads up to the gem. When I realized that the first guy had told me I sold the business, I went back home and I pulled out a book by Robert Ringer called Winning Through Intimidation, because I remembered something about this. And he had this line in there which is, "It's not what you thought the contract says, it's not what you wish the contract says, it's what the contract actually says that counts." And if anyone should know that, it's all you guys, because you have more damn documents than I've ever seen when I buy or sell a house, And the contract, and when I looked at that, that was when I realized, my God, the contract says I'm not an owner until I get the trademark. So let's go to the next one. Here's the philosophical point. This is a really powerful statement. Sometimes your most disappointing disappointments become your greatest blessings. The planting of a seed necessitates its death, the death of your fondest hopes before it can be reborn to bear the fruits of new life and new opportunity. And that was obviously true in my case, where I lost my big dream but started getting a lot of money and really enjoying the job. and I'm sure it's true for you. I have to say that I've never looked back 6 months later at some disaster and not thought that that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Over and over and over and over again, I get reinforcement from that. So let's jump on to a little bit more luck now. Okay, we decided we were going to, the advertising was good, but I wanted to get more publicity from public relations. So I hired a group out of Boston, public relations agency, and they lined up cities to go visit. My pinnacle on the whole tour was to get in front of USA Today fashion editor, because I wanted to get into a national newspaper. And this woman who we needed to meet was in Chicago. And so Linda, the PR girl, and I show up for our interview at 1 o'clock on some day, and the woman comes out and goes, "Oh my God, I've double booked. I can only spend 5 minutes with you." And I went, "Oh my God." We had this fantastic presentation. It was a 30-minute presentation. We had PowerPoint, we had everything, and I went, "Oh, how am I going to do this?" So I reached into my bag and I just pulled out a folder that had a bunch of photographs of celebrities. And I thought the only way I'm going to, get any mileage out of here is to show how it's sort of catching on, and then I'll, So if we could just flick through these slides. Here's one of Neil Young, Tom Petty, Sting, Patrick Swayze at the. Here's one of Jack Lemmon, Walter Matthau, Brooke Shields. Quick, skip that one. Okay, so I flicked. Nobody wears UGG boots in a red swimsuit on the beach. So I quickly flicked past that one, and started going, zeroing in on Heather Locklear here, and she goes, "No, go back, go back." So if you go forward there, Charlie, back one. So anyway, she goes, "Who was that?" So she goes, finds a Pamela Sue Anderson photograph and says, "Let me see that." She writes down the name of the newspaper, which was from a London tabloid. She writes down the name of the photographer, and she said, "Do you have a press kit?" And we said, "Yep," and she was gone. It was less than 5 minutes, and she was gone. And so, Linda and I were just like devastated. We lost the best account that we thought we were going to get on the whole tour. And next day I was at the airport on my way back to San Diego, and now you can go forward, Charlie. And pulled out USA Today in the lifestyle section, and this woman overnight had written the most fantastic article on UGG, and even though she used this sensational photo, the story and the fashion forward statements that she was making, and the way she must have read the whole press kit overnight, because the article was fantastic. And by the time I got back to San Diego in the afternoon, the staff were telling me, "God, the phones have not stopped. We've opened up so many new retailers across the country." And so that was another one of those lucky things that maybe had I made my full presentation and not shown these photos, we may never have got that article. So that's another example of luck. Okay, so let's head down to gem number 3. Okay. You know how I said that you look back at these disasters and they turn out to be good? Well, as fate would have it, a few years later, Neil, who was very unfit, and I used to joke you should go to a gym, and he would blow me off all the time. He was in a motocross race and had a massive heart attack during the race and was dead when he got to the hospital. And so I had to go in and try and figure out where we were at. I had to work with his widow and try and see where the business was at. In the meantime, he'd done a deal to buy out the other 2 partners, so it was just Neil and his wife. And so I spent a month, or the first few weeks in there, looking at the computer system and trying to track where the sales were. Nothing matched up. The inventory was, out of control. The sales were strong. We were still doing good sales, but all of the accounting, Neil had table after table after table in this warehouse set out with probably hundreds of orders to be shipped. There was no priority on what was going out. There was no inventory control. I didn't know how much money the company had, so I had to become a forensic accountant, which was lucky I was trained as that in the first place. But I had to go back, and pretty soon, after 3 or 4 weeks of pretty much living in the warehouse, I thought to myself, why am I doing this? I don't own the company. It's nice to try and help his wife out, but I've got to get on with my life. And so I came up with an idea. I said to Della, Della, if I give you a promise, the note to pay you for the inventory and everything, will you let me have the business? Because I knew I couldn't raise money to fund the production for the next year while the estate owned the business. So her and her lawyer went along with that, and so I bought the business back, moved it down to Anaheim, and what we needed was capital to finance the production for the next season, because now we're up to $5-6 million, and I'd been calling the supplier down in Albany, George, just hang with me, buddy, hang with me. We're going to get it together. I'll find the money. Don't worry, and just keep making these boots, because the orders were coming in from the sales reps all the time. And this was in June, July, and I wrote a business plan, and I started going out to the banks. Well, UGG's a fad, it'll never catch on, no. Started going to investment banks. UGG's margins aren't good, UGG will never catch on, it's a fad. And then friends and family, and we'd love to help you, Brian, but we just don't have millions of dollars, because I needed several $1 million to buy the product. So realizing that I couldn't go the traditional route, I started thinking laterally, and I thought, well, who would benefit? And I realized that the tanneries in Australia would benefit if I could provide an output for all the skins that were a byproduct of the meat industry, that if I could give them an outlet to sell the skins as boots in America, they would be all over it. And I went down and I met with the main one, Gordon Jackson, and he was super interested, but he was very cautious, and he wanted to know how I'm going to pay him, and I'm going, give me the product, I'll sell it and pay you. And well, it's a bit of a risk, and he was interested, but he kept stalling, and I'd be on the phone to George saying, George, don't let me down. We're going to get the money together sometime, and now it's getting up to August. We're supposed to ship in September, and I still don't have any way to get the product. And my sales rep, one of the girls on the road, calls in and said, hey, Brian, there's a group out there called Thunderwear, and they're selling sheepskin boots, and they're calling them thugs. And you might flip to the next slide. So I'm going, oh, shit, that's just what we need. But and I'm wondering, where do they get the product from? But I had bigger problems to worry about, so I didn't think too much about it. And I still kept on the road trying to get the business plan, trying to raise the money. And then the trade show was coming up in Long Beach for the Action Sports Trade Show. And George was saying, look, I can't send you any, if you can't promise give me the money, I can't send you product. And I'd ordered all these new charcoal skins and black skins for the first time ever. It was going to be a real expose at the trade show. And so anyway, the show comes up. We don't have the money to get new inventory, so we show up with the same old inventory that we had. And there is the Thunderwear booth, or the Thugs booth, and they've got all the charcoal, all the black, all the product that I had ordered for the season with Thugs labels on. And I realized, oh, damn it. Damn it. We're out of business. How on earth, if George isn't going to supply me, how on earth am I going to get the product? And so I went back home after that show, and we'd written so much business. I felt sort of bad that we were writing all these orders, and the Thunderwear booth was pretty quiet by comparison, and yet I didn't really know how we were going to deliver. So I sat down with my wife, and we talked it through and said, we're just going to have to close it down. there's no way at this late stage we can come into the market. So I called up Gordon, who owned the tannery in near Melbourne, and I said, Gordon, you know, I just want to call you, thank you for all the help you've put in months of work trying to make this get off the ground, but you know, George has just shipped the boots to another supplier, to another distributor, and we're not going to be able to pull it together. I just want to thank you for all of your help. And you know, we hung up. George was sad. I mean, Gordon was sad, and my wife and I are crying the blues that night. And like 5 minutes later, the phone rang, and it was Gordon, and he just said, "Screw George Bircher, I'll get you all the boots we need for this season." And so from absolute disaster, we're back in business again. And so I sent all the patterns down to his manufacturers. It took about a month to fill the pipeline, but pretty soon, you know, October, we were getting shipments through, 3,000 or 4,000 pairs a week coming through. It wasn't enough. It was never enough. The quality wasn't great, but we were in business, and the boots went out with the UGG logo on the back of them, and that's what counted for the market. Now, a pure fluke that happened to be a glitch in the customs brokers later in that season. It was getting towards Christmas, and we, as soon as the boots would arrive, our retailers knew that they came in every Friday. They were there with their trucks on Saturday. We didn't have to wait for UPS or anything, but the retailers were there with their trucks to get as many boots as they could. And this broker made a glitch, and he sent us 3,000 pairs of boots with Thug labels on. And he sent 1,200 pairs of UGG boots up to the Thunderwear warehouse. And so I had all these nefarious thoughts for a while about what to do with all these boots, but I realized that my 1,200 pairs were more important to me than any revenge. So I called him up and I said, hey, I'll bring them up and swap them around, you know. So I did that and got my boots and offloaded his 3,000 pairs of boots. And it was when I was driving home through Camp Pendleton after that little transaction, it struck me. I choke up when I think of this. We couldn't keep boots in the warehouse for like 10, 15 minutes. His warehouse was chocked to the ceiling with product. And I realized how loyal my customers had been that refused to go with the knockoffs, you know. So that was a testament to great customer service and great follow-up with all of the retailers who had eventually, I realized, they become more than customers, they were all my friends. So.
You should have sent him flowers or sent him, welcome to your new home.
So let's have a little bit more luck. Okay, we'll lift it up again. For a couple of years, we'd been getting calls every Christmas. Now we're up to, you know, 8, 9, 10 million. And this girl, Trudy, kept calling every Christmas. I want 20 pairs, 30 pairs. I want you to send them to London. And well, Trudy turns out to be Trudy Styler, who was Sting's wife. And one day she calls up and goes, oh my God, I've been to a seminar. It's changed my life. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me. I want a special favor. I want you to find the most perfect pair of size, whatever they were, tall ultras in sand. And so, you know, she says, okay, here's the address. Oprah, care of Oprah Winfrey Show. Chicago, Illinois, right? And so we sent them off to Oprah, and then that began Oprah's love affair that after, you know, I sold the business shortly thereafter, and for 3 or 4 seasons we were on the best picks for Christmas, 20 minutes at a time. Oprah's favorite things, 20 minutes of nothing but Uggs, and there is no way that any one company could have afforded to pay for that sort of advertising at that time. So it's again that serendipitous luck when you start out, the universe just conspires to work with you. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Whoops. Oh, no, this is the gem. I almost skipped the whole gem. Right? Remember what I've just been through, and I found this in a book that I wrote down. This is so important. It's in the book I've just finished writing. It's twice in there. And I have it typed out and it's taped to the front of my daily planner because I live my life based on this principle. You have to feast upon uncertainty, fatten upon disappointment, enthuse over apparent defeat, invigorate in the presence of difficulties. Now, if you listen to the story I've just told you, every one of these happened. Exhibit indomitable courage in the face of immensity. Well, boy, I was there. And exercise unconquerable faith when confronted with the challenge of the inexplicable, which is George doing an end run on me, right? And what this does, it takes you from being a victim of, oh my God, the worst has happened, I'll never survive, da da da. It turns this into a very positive affirmation where something's, not right. God damn it, that's good. What is it good about it? Fatten upon disappointment. Look at the disappointment I had when I lost the business and it came back. This is the most true statement that I've ever lived. The last part of the quote goes on to say, in liaison with God or the universe or whoever you want to use there, nothing, absolutely nothing is impossible. And that's where I live. Okay, so let's jump past that. As I mentioned, the bigger the business gets, the more money it needs. We're now up to $7 or $8 million. I'm sorry, by the way, this is my beautiful daughter Kelly, who's helping me out. She's not very good at sign language. Okay, 5 minutes, I'm almost done, yeah, thank you. Thank you. So we're now at $10 million of orders. I know we're going to sell $15 million worth of product. I know that we are not going to be able to finance the next season. And so we have to try and figure out, the business plans weren't working. Everybody still thought it was a fad, even at 10 million. So I'd had a couple of suitors to try and buy the business. One of them was a guy, Doug Otto, who had started his business called Deckers, making those little pink and yellow neoprene triple-decker thongs, way back in the 70s. And he'd grown his business and I'd grown mine. He eventually got the license for Teva sandals, and he had taken his company public, and I knew he had $20-30 million in the bank. His company just suffered every winter because they didn't ship. Our company suffered every summer because we couldn't ship boots in the summer. And so he tried to buy us. I joked with him now and again, Doug, you can't afford us. But now the pressure was on me, and I realized that we're not going to survive next year because I will never raise $10 million to buy product. And by fluke, again, this serendipitous, this way it happens, I was going to a trade show in Atlanta called the Super Show, and way at the other end of the baggage claim at the airport was Doug Otto. I got goosebumps again all over me, and I just went, it's perfect. He's gone public, he's got the cash. So I walked down and he saw me come in and start smiling, and said, Doug, if ever it's going to happen, now's the time. And within the next 24 hours, we had the accountants talking to each other, and that set up, 6 months later, we sold the company to Deckers. I was able to cash out, and they got a great brand that they've since taken on to be $1 billion. It's now the biggest, footwear product in the whole group. So that was again another bit about the serendipitousness. Now, as a finishing thing, I want to share something with you that I never would have thought possible for some 29-year-old kid coming out of Australia, broke, looking for a business. And Kelly, my daughter, sent me this text. If you could go to the next slide. Whoops, oh sorry, that's the Teva here. She sends me this text. Dad, I just saw this on TV, And it's what three-letter word comes before Australia in the name of a brand of sheepskin boots introduced. And for this kid to become part of the American folklore culture was a pretty special thing. So that's about it. I have really enjoyed giving another talk. I'm getting a little bit better at it each time, even though I may be 5 minutes over time. If any of you are in a position to are looking for public speakers, I'd be more than willing to work with you. I'd love the opportunity. The book will be coming out sometime in November, December, so look for that. And if you wanted to go online and help me out by just registering with my website is briansmithspeaker.com. It says UGG founder here. That does bounce to Brian Smith Speaker, but Brian Smith Speaker. So Sam, thank you very, very much.
Stick around.
Okay. Great, and I'd also love to thank Kelly and Brian Trachel for coming down. Brian, thanks for introducing me to this group, and to Sam, I've really appreciated it. Thank you very much.